Hi everybody, and welcome back to the second episode of Decomposing with me, Daria. Today we're going to start getting into more of the open-ended questions, starting with something completely up for debate in the music world, something that I definitely will not be able to form an exact answer on, and that is the question, do we need music genres? This is a lot to unpackage, but let's start with the basics. So I think we all have an idea of what a music genre is, right? But the term actually came from the need to separate the distinction between musical form, which is essentially the organization of a piece, and musical style, which is more specific to each artist's uniqueness. So it's obviously important to be able to have a language for music and talk about it in an effective way, which is partially where this term came from. But definition aside, have you ever thought about exactly the purpose for them? Like why we have them or what they're used for? It's pretty certain that our use for them today is a little bit different than it was 20, 30, or even 50 years ago. Or that is, at least their function was a lot different. Do we really use music genres for things today? I mean, a little bit, right? But they used to be used for a lot more particular functions. So way back when selling physical music was more of a norm, take record stores with cassettes, CDs, and record LPs. Genres would be a way of separating music in the store to be able to find what artist you were looking for. And even from that, once you find the artist, you might be inclined to look into the other groups that are next to them that supposedly sound similar or are in the same genre. This could be helpful not only to artists, because maybe if you're lesser known, someone looking for a certain type of sound may find your work in there and be inspired to pick it up as well. This works out well for fans too, because way back when it wasn't as easy to find new music. I mean, where would you look? You might not remember the song or artist name from the radio. Maybe you heard something about a group in a magazine at one time. But here at the music store, you have instant access to other suggestions. So genres then could have been something to benefit the artist and fans simultaneously. But as I said, physical music isn't exactly as popular as it used to be. I think me and you, even though I am still a massive fan of physical music, are most familiar with things like digital music. That's on things like streaming services or digital downloads. But the thing is, we still see music genres being used on these platforms. Are we using music genres in these modern times for the same reason? I have a feeling a lot of us look for them less. But when we do, it's still for similar reasons of being able to find other artists who sound similar to the ones that we enjoy. So if we're looking to artists now to find similarities in sound, we don't really need genres, do we? Just artist recommendations. But who knows, maybe it's important for you to have the name for the genre in order to, once again, have a language around music. Sometimes it can be very tricky trying to talk about music as it's such an unattainable medium, so using genres can help us understand or describe what kind of sound idea we're trying to get across to someone else. This might be important to us as fans, but think about the artists. Is it rude to say that their sound is similar to someone else? Well, obviously sometimes it's a compliment to the artist if they're a fan of someone's work, but for a lot of artists, it's their goal to be something original, and they might not be in favor of this comparison. We've heard artists since the beginning of time expressing their dislike for music genres, which I guess is a fair critique, right? The person in the actual business affected by the subject matter should probably have the first say on how they feel about it, and us as fans and outside sources should probably listen to their input. So, the general consensus among a lot of musicians is that genres are bad because they're restricting. They're labels trying to fit bands into a box, and because art is something so vast, they're irrelevant. I mean, this is a valid argument, and that's really all I have to say. Take that perspective into consideration. But also, here are a couple other perspectives to think about. If genres are restrictive and limiting because they label artists, shouldn't that label also act as inspiration for the artist to be more creative and try new things? If they don't want to be defined by a label, there's no reason not to think outside the box and keep fans on their toes by being whatever kind of artist you want to be. I mean, no one really said just because you're in a genre, you have to stay in it. What about your fans who use genres to create connections among groups? If a genre helps your audience grow and create new relationships, wouldn't removing them be quite sad? Another thing we use genres for in the modern day is awards. Sure, not all artists really care about awards, but some sure do. And how else would we classify them if it weren't for genres? Then again, there's also that general side of the argument that begs the question. There are just so many music genres, and so many subgenres that overlap. Once you get down to it, couldn't every single song technically be its own musical genre? And alright, I do actually have a solid answer for that question. It's yes. If you wanted, you could label every single song as its own genre. But if it's yes, so what? Should we not have genres at all, or should we label every single song as its own genre? Or at least label as many subgenres as possible? Is it worth the time? With every possible situation, it's pretty much that, well, each perspective has its good and bad contributions. And I mean, what is the likelihood we will either abolish all music genres or start breaking them down so much that we can't even keep track anymore? Neither is really as likely to happen, right? So I'm leaving this up to you. What do you think of music genres? Do you think they benefit artists more than they hurt them? Do you think there's still a need for them in this modern age? Do you think that the function of them has changed over time? And ultimately, do we need music genres? Well, like I said, that's as close as we're getting to any answers on the show today. Thanks again for listening. Tune in to the next episode where we'll ask the question, is there a sanctity in discussing song lyrics and their meaning? Should we be analyzing songs, or should they be left to individual interpretations? That's just something to get you thinking in between shows. This has been Decomposing with me, Daria Lawson. To listen to previous episodes of the podcast and other Arrow podcasts, visit southeastarrow.com/multimedia, and feel free to shoot me any emails about the program at delawson1s@cmo.edu.